Okay, dear colleagues, thank you for joining us today for the webinar, Integration of Highly Skilled Refugees, Role of European Higher Education Community. I am Sini Piippo. I'm from the Finnish National Agency for Education, EDUFI, and I will be chairing this session. This webinar focuses on the role of European higher education community in supporting higher education in emergencies, as well as integration of highly skilled refugees in Europe. Support initiatives in this field are needed now more than ever. The importance of institutional engagement, motivation behind commitment, and links to higher education strategies will be reflected by our speakers. This webinar is organized as part of Guiding Refugees via European Exchange and Training READ project that we are running with Academic Cooperation Association ACA and German Academic Exchange Service DAAD. This is the first webinar in a series of a total 3 organized by the project. We would be very happy to have you joining also the 2 other webinars. They will be focusing on students with refugee background entering the job market and creating sustainable career paths for scholars with refugee background. Please visit the GREED website for additional information. We will provide you the link. I have a few technical remarks before we give the floor to our speakers. The duration of this webinar is 1 hour. As a participant, you have the opportunity to send comments and questions via chat. These questions will be raised at the end of the webinar. We have reserved extra time for that after the 3 presentations. And this webinar will be available as a recording on the GREED website after the event, and we will send you the link to the recording afterwards. But now it is the time to present our speakers. First, we will have José Díaz Verdejo, Policy Officer at the DG Education, Youth, Sport and Culture of the European Commission. He will provide us perspectives on the EU support for refugees in higher education and research. Our second speaker will be Nadine Jovakar, who works as the Program Officer for International Relations at the Austrian Rectors Conference, University of Austria. She will provide a national level strategic perspective on this topic. Then we have Marita Häkkinen, Coordinator at the University of Jyväskylä's Student and Academic Services. She works in supporting immigrants in higher education in Finland, services supporting migrant study and career paths in Finland, linking the discussion to institutional level commitment. And now, José Díaz Verdejo, now the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning to everybody from sunny Brussels. Yes, it happens sometimes. So we have a nice casual Friday here in Brussels. And I will go through a presentation that I prepared for 20 minutes, but I will make it shorter so we have more time for questions. Let's imagine that this is a table. You need some imagination here. And this is a table where we want to put as many refugees as possible on higher education and research. We want to support as many refugees as possible. What do we need for a strong table is 4 legs, and we have 2 legs on which the EU acts more, and then 2 legs on which national governments act more. So on the grey legs, we cannot say very much because it depends on national governments. But allow me to do some publicity here because we have a recent report on the integration of refugees in higher education in Europe. It was published some days ago. And there you can find the differences between different countries with regard to the support to refugees in higher education and research. And you can see that it makes a big difference when a country is open to migration, politically open to migration, and has an interest in supporting refugees. So it has general policies to support refugees in all the fields, and that includes higher education. And then, of course, other countries with less sympathy for migrants that are not interested in establishing these policies and are not proactive in the integration of migrants in higher education research. Okay, so I was saying that well, we have these 4 legs. On 2 legs, we don't have a lot of power, and then on the other 2 legs, the EU acts with migration policy and then with education and research programs. So starting with migration policy, without going into details, we have 5 pillars of action on migration policy: asylum, legal migration, integration, irregular migration, and cooperation with countries of origin. I will speak briefly about the 3 top pillars. Here you have asylum figures, just to show you the dimension of the crisis, the big phenomenon that we had in 2015-2016, how the figures went down in 2017 back to normal, and how this can impact on the interest of well, the political level in implementing policies of support for refugees and migrants. If there was a time when the sense of urgency was felt, this time is over. So we will have to see how we can be effective in this advocacy work with the national authorities. Legal migration is a shared competence. That means that the EU establishes the rights of third country nationals in the EU, but each member state is free to decide the numbers. So how many migrants are accepted in the territory. Here you have the 7 legal migration directives that are effective at this moment. I will focus on the Students and Researchers Directive that was adopted 3 years ago, and that the 25 member states that implement the migration acquis have to implement, had to implement by last year. So now the Commission is monitoring which member states did it and which didn't. This directive affects third country nationals coming to study and to do research, and for other purposes that are not so relevant today, coming, I was saying, for more than 90 days. So this is the case for of most students. What is the added value of the directive? Well, that it establishes the conditions for admission of third country nationals coming for studies or research, and that means that a person fulfilling the conditions has to be accepted in the territory. So member states have the option to add some additional conditions that are here on the bottom, but they cannot add others. So they cannot make up new conditions. If a person has the travel document, the sickness insurance, the proof of resources, and the acceptance by the higher education institution, and then eventually, if there are other conditions, if the person fulfills all the conditions, has to be accepted in territory. That means that even if this directive is not expressly addressed to refugees, if there are refugees in third countries fulfilling the conditions, they could come to the EU. So it can be used by candidates in the application for the authorization to enter the territory. I will not go very much into details about the directive or the treaties. On integration, the European Commission cannot harmonize national policies, but can propose coordination measures and can foster the exchange of ideas. After 2020, we don't know how the funds will be organized, but we have already proposals by the Commission, and you have to pay attention not only to the actions that we can finance via Erasmus, but also to other funds that can be relevant for the integration of higher education of students and researchers in refugee students and researchers. And these are the Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund that will address mainly integration measures in a first phase, and then the European Social Fund that can also help in integration for a longer term. So you have to also follow the evolution of the decisions regarding these funds. Then if we go to the fourth leg on education and research programs at EU level, these are the main instruments that concern the target group today. I will briefly describe what Erasmus Plus does for refugees at this moment. In the EU, we finance strategic partnerships outside the EU, capacity building projects, and then we have also worked on the recognition of qualifications held by refugees that you can find on this website. And we have also a program for support, for linguistic support of students, and also refugees can benefit from this program. So far, around 10,000 refugees have benefited from this program. Strategic partnerships are innovative practices that are reflected between different actors active in the field, and we have already several strategic partnerships that concern the coordination of measures, the support measures that universities can implement for refugees. And outside the EU, we finance capacity building projects where institutions from the EU work together with institutions from third countries for the modernization, accessibility, internationalization of the curriculum, and also to improve the quality of education. And among the many capacity building projects, we have at this moment 9 concerning refugees. 2 was elected in 2016, 1 in 2017, and 6 last year. So we are trying to promote this possibility to get more and better applications for these projects. The future Erasmus will be structured around the same key actions as the current one. The Commission has proposed to double the budget. And we are also trying to reflect on how to make Erasmus more inclusive so that more diverse groups can have access to this program. This reflection is a work in progress, and this should also affect migrants, people with migrant background, and refugees who are already in the EU. The Madad Fund is also supporting refugees in third countries, concretely around Syria, and this is run by DG NEAR and is meant to support almost 30,000 refugees in education in these years. And then a final word on support for researchers. There's a mistake at the top of this slide. Support for researchers. We have the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions that are open to researchers of any nationality, and there are different measures to make sure that the fact that they interrupted the career doesn't penalize them in the selection. So there are some measures supporting refugee researchers, and then you have the calls under the Science for Refugees that you know very well, because if I understood correctly, this project is part of this call. I think that as an introduction, this will do, and I'm also of course ready to take questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You might have noticed that there were some questions raised already via chat. So for your information, that we can raise them at the end of this webinar. But for Jose, for your information, that you can see the questions in the chat.
So shall I take them later?
Yes. At the end of when all the 3 speakers have finalized their parts. So we will get back to the questions then.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you. And then we continue with our second speaker, Nadine Shovakar. So the floor is yours now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm trying to take over the presentation. I think I've succeeded. Yes. Yeah. Good morning from my side also. My name is Nadine Schowaker. I work for Universities Austria, and I will speak about our MORE initiative, which is basically a nationwide initiative by the Austrian universities for refugee students and refugee academics. I want to start out actually by saying something that I think unites all of us, and that is actually why all of this, why MORE, or why the MORE initiative, and that is because we believe in the refugees' knowledge, skills and talents and the contributions they can make if they are successfully integrated into receiving societies. So this was a base feeling when we started the project in 2015. I'll give you a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about. First, I'll give you an overview over the MORE project. Then, as I was saying, it started in 2015. In 2018, we did an evaluation where we got perspectives from the MORE coordinators from the universities, some facts and figures like how many people were involved, and some perspectives from the MORE students, so the students who were actually in the program. And then I want to end by giving you what we feel were key challenges and conditions for success for the MORE project. Starting with the overview. Click. So as I was saying, when the big influx of asylum seekers and refugees was there in summer of 2015, this is when the idea of doing something for refugees at the Austrian universities came up. There were already some individual initiatives, and then we also got involved as a rectors conference, which is an umbrella organization of all the Austrian public universities. And the MORE initiative provides a space for reflection and offers possibilities to integrate in the university as a student or as a scientist. It is now available at all of the 21 public universities, and that's not only now, but that was already since 2015. So it started out in summer, and by the end of the year 2015, it was available nationwide. All the MORE offers are free of charge, and they're open to asylum seekers as well as recognized refugees. The only prerequisite to get into the MORE program as a student, for example, is your legal status, your proof of right of residence. Over the course of time, universities have also developed individualized admission procedures in order to better place the students. Now, the MORE initiative has generally 3 legs, which I'm going to just quickly introduce. One is the MORE courses. These are aimed at prospective students. It means they offer language training. Students can partake in the regular degree courses out of the regular degree programs. And they're held, as I was saying, at every university town in Austria. The second leg is MORE Perspective, which is for academics and scientists, and it provides a platform for refugee academics and scientists to share their knowledge and experience. And the last part are MORE Activities, which means this is a more open format. For example, they have partially like city walks in Vienna, or people join the choir, or there are sport activities, which is a little more open format to also socially integrate. How did we set it up? Each of our 21 member universities has a so-called MORE coordinator. That's the person who is responsible for implementing the MORE program at that specific university, and also a one-stop shop for the prospective students, for example, to find out about information. Then this is has also student bodies, which means the National Students' Union has helped us to find local students who are helping the refugee students. And then we also, which I forgot on the slide, we also are working together with NGOs who basically link the refugees, especially those who are still asylum seekers, with the universities. And then Universities Austria coordinates all of this, which means we have regular meetings with the NGOs, with the MORE coordinators, with the student bodies, and we also do everything that is about finding sponsors and the PR and marketing. As I was saying, it started in winter term 2015-16. Last year we did an evaluation after 5 semesters where we looked in facts and figures, which is basically the enrollment data of the participants of the MORE courses. And we also did 2 surveys. I did a survey with the MORE coordinators to get the university perspective, to collect like their ideas on the goals, which we of course had at the beginning, but also if they feel they've been fulfilled and their experiences with the program. And the other leg was done by the University of Linz, and this was a survey done with the MORE students to find out about their satisfaction with the courses, how many courses they will complete, and also they were trying to find out about their social integration. Now coming to the MORE coordinators, what were actually the objectives of the universities? And they were, again, 2-leg. There was some general objectives and some specific ones. I'll show you the next slide right away. It's a bit small, but I'm sure you can download everything later. So the more general objectives were everyday structures and integration, and also orientation and becoming familiar with the educational system. So which is a more broader, general getting to know the Austrian system, so to say. The 2 other goals which universities are pursuing is language acquisition, get them fit in German because most of our courses are in German, and preparation for degree studies, which means sometimes when you come, for example, with a Syrian school leaving diploma, you need to take some extra math classes so that it's equivalent for a degree program. So universities are pursuing all of these goals. As you can see, the orange, the left side, is basically which means strongly agree. So they pursue both the goals with the program. To the facts and figures, in those 5 semesters, approximately 2,500 students have partaken in the MORE program, and they have used about 4,000 courses, which means course offers in these 5 semesters. And then, of course, the MORE activities are on top of that. The average MORE student is 26 years old, is masculine, is male, and originates also from the main countries of influx, which is Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran. He experiences an Austrian university for the first time via the MORE program, and we assume that he stays there for several semesters. Then we also looked into the transfers, sort of the course of studies, as in how many students did actually come from these individual courses and language trainings into full degree studies. And in these 5 semesters, around 120 students are already either in a preparatory course, which is getting you ready to study, or they are have already transferred to degree studies. Now the numbers seem low out of 2,500, 120, but one has to take into account, of course, that the refugee students came with mostly zero knowledge of the German language, for example. So it takes time to get ready for degree studies. So we are expecting that these numbers will go up. Then once those people who are already studying a degree program are mainly in management and science fields. As you can see, you can look at the details later. Regarding course completion, this comes from that survey that was done with the MORE students. 124 MORE students have been asked from all over Austria, and they say that more than 2/3 report that they've successfully completed at least one course. And that is pretty good, and 1/6 has done even more than 3 courses. So a lot of MORE students are very eager and very fast in doing many courses. Then regarding social integration, that survey also asked the refugee students, have you made new friends through the MORE program? And we are happy to report that 87% of the students have actually made new friends through the MORE program, and about half of them made both Austrian new friends and friends out of the refugee community. So we can say that the MORE program does add to social integration also. Now coming to the last 2 parts, this is on the one side the key challenges, and on the other side what we feel are factors for success. Main key challenges many times in life is finances. more students, of course, as I was saying, all our offers are free of charge. However, many students don't live in the university town, so they need to travel there. So these are costs that come up, and also, of course, students who are still asylum seekers because they have very, very little money. Then the other part of challenges is that through the NGOs we were lucky enough to reach the refugee community, but we have still, like, the level of participation of women is not as high as we would feel comfortable with. We started out with only 8% female participants, now we've reached 12%, but we would still feel better if it was higher. We are trying to to help in both these matters, the finances and the female participation, through a grant that we give of 50 euros. It's called a semester package to more students, which they get, and we give it especially to asylum seekers and also female students. And then the last part which we have to tackle is to promote the transitions to degree studies even more, whether it's just time that's needed or scholarships, we'll see. Now, what has worked well? The MORE initiative was drawn up very quickly. I mean, for very big organizations like universities, we had very decisive university management who backed it from day one. And then, of course, many researchers, a lot of administrative university personnel and individuals who work extra hours and put in a lot of enthusiasm and belief and help and walk the extra mile to make this happen. And of course, it also helped that there were already some initiatives already in place. The other factor for success, which we feel, is the integration of NGOs, because not only do they have access or are they in contact with the refugee community, but they also understand many things and helped us also help the students be good buddies. And there was a lot of knowledge exchange. And however, as a almost last point, is that our project, of course, depends on the overall feeling of a refugee-friendly political system also, which could provide scholarships for more students. Because, as I was saying, the finances are short. As a last point, I want to say that we started out by saying that we do believe in the talents of refugee students and academics, and with these surveys, we can see after now 3 years that university do feel that they are enriched by refugee students and academics. And we will continue with the program. There are still 500 students this semester in the program, and we will continue to improve it. Thank you for your attention. That's my last slide. We have the evaluation online. So first of all, if you have any questions, this is my email address. And on our website, there's much more information. And there is also the evaluation. There's an English short version of the evaluation to be found there. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine. It's very interesting to hear from this national level project that is already in evaluation phase, and we can reflect on the success of the activities. And again, as mentioned with the previous speaker, there are some questions in the chat for you. So if you get familiar with the questions, and then we can raise them at the end of the webinar. But thank you so much,
okay,
Nadine. And then we continue with our next speaker. So it's Marita Häkkinen from Jyväskylä. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Sini. Hello, everyone. And can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, good. And greetings from sunny Jyväskylä, central Finland. We have lots of snow over here, so probably a little bit different weather compared with the Central European one. Okay, this is a very, very important topic to me, so I'm happy to present a little bit a different point of view to today's theme, namely the institutional level commitment. And I'm going to focus on my university mostly, but also present a little bit the perspective, the nationwide perspective from Finland. On the other hand, I will deal with the role of these kind of supportive functions targeted for highly educated refugees within the higher education institution. And on the other hand, I would like to take a look at the role of the higher education institution and how to sort of stabilize or make these kind of functions more permanent in the academy. And therefore, I structured the presentation to kind of follow the different phases of the work I've been doing here in Jyväskylä. From the project phase, where we piloted the functions, following the current phase where these functions are actually located in the university's services, main services, and funded from the strategic budget. And then finally, I'm going to just shortly introduce a set of good practices, integrating guidance, academic language and subject training, and admission processes. This work is currently going on. Okay, just a very briefly about the University of Jyväskylä that locates in central Finland is a middle-sized university in the Finnish scale out of these 14 universities we have. Being quite international, actually, so we have more than 100 nationalities in our student and staff backgrounds. And in this situation, in late 2015 and early 2016, to Finland, some 32,000 asylum seekers arrived. I know this figure does not sound very big to most of you in the audience, but in the Finnish scale it was quite a lot actually, because in the previous years those numbers annually had been something like from 1,500 to 6,000 asylum seekers per year. However, what was noticed, of course, was that the age range of the and backgrounds were a little bit different compared with the previous years. And therefore, the Ministry of Education and Culture in Finland wanted to tackle very quickly the needs of the highly educated asylum seekers and those who were actually eligible for studies, higher education studies. And we started 2 pilot projects that were named SIMHE, this abbreviate meaning Supporting Immigrants in Higher Education in Finland. And the projects were started here in Jyväskylä and then in the capital area in Helsinki, Metropolitan University of Applied Sciences. And both institutions actually offered these focused functions from guidance and counseling to kind of defining and understanding the role of the refugee applicant in the higher education system, and starting to also to take a look at the language issue, because we have both the degree studies within the applied sciences and universities, and also short courses available in Finnish and in English, and of course Swedish, but namely these languages for these target groups. And then also to establish a stakeholder network. So the first year we had this project phase, but soon we noticed that we will actually have to broaden these functions in Finland. There were a lot of inquiries, a lot of prospective refugee, and also I have to now, and the audience must bear in mind that these SIMHE functions are not only targeted for refugee background persons, but also persons who have different kind of statuses living in Finland as migrants. So in early 2017, these functions were broadened into other higher education institutions as well, to cover actually regionally the map of Finland, as you can see in here in this slide. But all of these institutions offering guidance and counseling, also academic courses, from short courses to longer preparative programs, recognizing prior learning support, distant counseling, and then also we are producing statistics and participating in surveys, the data collected by the Ministry of Education and Culture. Just a brief look to the figures, and I counted that some more than 2,500 persons have been participated so far in these functions. But of course, what must be kept on mind is that we are not only offering the services for the prospective students or prospective refugees or migrant students, but also doing a lot of developing work. So not all, for example, my work is focused on guidance and counseling and this kind of educative purposes. Okay, but then early 2017, my university here in Jyväskylä decided that these supportive functions for refugees and migrants should be established more in the university structure. And that's why the SIMHE services were located or were placed actually in the university's main services, namely the student and academic services and the team of admission services. And this was actually a very important change, I'd say, because it promoted the guidance as part of the admission services, where it had not been there previously, at least in this scale, and not very much targeted to the migrants and taking into account their specific needs and for example, in terms of time, allowing time for this kind of discussions and finding out study options and meaningful study and career paths on. Therefore, I'd say that strengths following the new position in the university structure have been the visibility to this phenomenon of the refugee in higher education. And also it has enabled the knowledge sharing and professional development within the student and academic services. And of course integrated the different aspects of and for admission from the applicant's perspective. However, what I found out based on my experiences from my own work was that when, for example, the guidance and counseling was done from the project, that was rather, let me say, distant from the main university structure. We could not take well enough into account the admission criteria aspects, for example, the admission criteria being the main tool for the university to admit the study places and to sort of steer the allocation of study places in the university. And therefore this was very important thing to become more to start to know more about this kind of the formal tools and policy of the university. And of course, when we talk about the prospective student who has a refugee background, the position is not, as we know, always very simple, or there are many aspects that may hinder the path to the higher education in a new system where they have moved, having their backgrounds mostly. I've been, for example, discussing with refugees who already have degrees from bachelor's even to master's, or even to interrupted dissertations and so on. But mostly coming from these kind of higher education systems, we often do not know very well. And of course also having degrees that are not finished yet, therefore making it a little bit complicated to find a meaningful continuation for the degree studies when the degree is kind of almost there, graduated. Of course, we've identified, I will get back to this issue also in the last slide of my presentation, but there are gaps in competencies that are required in the admission criteria compared with the competencies sometimes the prospective refugee student. And also there can be some kind of differences in the concept of academic culture and learning. Not to mention the impact on the statuses, the residence permits, what kind of impact they can have to the individual situation. So just in brief about this slide, the refugee may actually face the lack of training, suitable training, lack of academic language proficiency, and lack of real choices. So this raises a question, what is our responsibility as an institution, as an academy? And therefore, just quickly, I have 2 minutes, I guess. So what we have introduced here in the University of Jyväskylä since last year, we launched a program that is been where we actually had the first enrollment last year, and now we are looking forward funding for the second enrollment for the coming year. So this Integra in Finland program actually combines the functions of guidance and counseling, the functions of language teaching, academic language teaching, and then the subject courses that are being offered by the Open University. The aim of it is to by integrating this kind of studies and training, and also intensive guidance that has been linked throughout the 9-month period that each student is in this program, to sort of tackle the question and problems of admission and applications, but also to offer options to build the competencies for those refugee and migrant background persons who already are professionals in their countries of origin, and then therefore via participating in this program, they can for example build their academic language competence and their subject competence, so that they can proceed better to the professions in working life that are actually that meet their previous education better. And then I have a couple of links here in my last slide and some pictures from Jyväskylä, and I'm happy to answer any questions, though unfortunately I can't see any questions, Sini, so if you could kindly review the questions so that I'll be able to answer also to my part. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marita, for this comprehensive presentation, combining the national level and the institutional level. It was very interesting. There is actually one question that that is targeting Marita. I can raise it here. So, do the figures relate to migrants in general or to refugees in particular?
Yeah, sorry, I was about to say that. So they refer to migrants in general. We are not, when we do the statistics, we are not differentiating the refugee from other statuses migrants.
Okay, thank you. And there is actually couple of other questions for Marita that I could raise here as well. So one is, how long does it take to have a level or diploma recognition in Finland? And maybe I read the other one as well, if Marita, you cannot see the questions. The other one is Integra Finland supporting refugees to integrate into the labor market, or what is the aim of the program?
Okay, thank you, Sini. So maybe I'll take the second question first. Integra in Finland is mainly targeted for those persons who are looking forward to admission to further higher education studies, namely degree studies, master's degree studies, or continuing their bachelor's within Finnish higher education, but also including for example, the academic professions like teachers, doctors, and so on. Then the first question, so I'm not actually very sure if I'm the right person to reply, because recognizing the diploma is actually done in the by different officials depending on the field of the diploma. And if I talk about on behalf of the higher education institutions, the recognizing part is upon each higher education institution. And usually it goes so that the student has to have first official student status until they can apply for recognizing their previous learning from the institution. But then, of course, we have, for example, National Agency of Education that recognizes the level of the degrees and for example, teachers' professional rights and so on. These kind of decisions may take a few months depending on the further requirements.
Okay, thank you, Marita. I think that we can raise one more question for you, and then we will go back to the previous speakers. So there's a specific question on how many of your 2017 intakes are taking up university studies now in 2018 or 19?
A good question, which I can't unfortunately answer, because we have not yet collected the figures exactly from these. But we had a survey, but unfortunately the survey did not cover well enough this question. So we are still developing this kind of data collection. And going to open a new survey in coming March about this.
So maybe we can then turn to the questions sent to Nadine. There are a lot of them again in the chat. So Nadine, are you?
Yeah, I'm there.
Did you have a chance to see the questions? And
yeah, I've seen some of the questions, and there were some questions regarding the entry conditions, like basically the main entry conditions is the legal status, as I was saying, especially for the German courses. Universities have developed interviews. They are partially looking at the background, whether people have already studied, whether they have a school leaving diploma. But the important thing is, because then also there were questions regarding getting into degree studies. There are no different provisions for the degree studies, whether you have a refugee background or any other international background, which means any other non-Austrian, not for Austrian citizenship, but for whether you completed your schooling in the Austrian system. So you need to have a school leaving diploma, which is equivalent to the Austrian one, which means that depending on your country of origin of your school leaving diploma, you might have to take some extra math classes. And like these are things that it also depends on what you would like to study. So these criteria are defined by the university. And the other important thing, of course, is German language proficiency, which is depending on the universities between B2 or C1 of the GERS. So it's rather high. And then the other question was question about money. Important to know the program is financed by the universities, not by the government. Of course, universities get a lot of their money by the government, but there has not been given any additional money to the universities to run the MORE program. They have, however, found sponsors. So they have especially the German courses are like extra courses that have been set up, and there they've found sometimes companies or like other sponsors who would help them with the additional costs, and the rest of the costs were the universities took over. And then the last part, what's the takeaway from what I've seen? Is sort of what can universities learn, or somebody had also what arguments are there for the universities. I think that it's like any international person, it enriches the local system that is there. Because people with different backgrounds come in, you can also, like this MORE project has involved the admissions office, the international relations office, the rectors, so the university management, like many different parts of the universities. So some of the universities have set up this interdepartmental task force, which is definitely a learning, like to work in different ways together, also to work intensively with the students, because they were also involved, to work with NGOs, which all is not for the first time. The universities have done that, but that is, of course, a very good approach and something to take away. Also, some universities have said they are looking into their information material, because is it suitable for your usual international target audience, and do you have to adapt it, not just translate it to Arabic, for example, but have to, like maybe more counseling, or like they've broadened their offers for international students. And so I think there's a lot of takeaway as institutional learning from a program like that, I think. So these were the questions I found now quickly.
Thank you. I think that there was one more aspect raised that you touched upon already in your presentation about providing financial help during the studies, or providing help to enter the university.
Yes, providing financial aid. That's the what we do as an organization are these €50 grants per semester. So that's not a lot. Then it depends on your status in Austria whether you can get financial aid. If you're a recognized refugee, you are eligible for the regular student scholarship sort of system. So you can go into that stream. But yeah, that is a big topic, scholarships. But there is no specific scholarship for refugees. And we don't give out scholarships either from our side. The offers are for free. But yeah, as I was saying, you can get, once your refugee status has been cleared, you are eligible like any other Austrian.
Hello?
Hello, yes.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay. Good. It's a bit like the lottery. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Now you won, so it's.
Okay, good. So let's stay connected. Well, one of the biggest challenges for me is that we have a complex institutional framework with different institutions and national authorities and also academic institutions. So don't think that I'm trying to skip questions, but if I don't have an answer, I will not make it up. So I will refer it to other sources. There is a question on fees for refugees. Well, we are not in control of the fees for refugees. I suppose it changes from country to country, from institution to institution. So I cannot develop very much on this. On the contrary, there's a question on capacity building projects selected so far. This started in 2016. So the first year we selected 2 projects. One is called Refugees Education Support in MENA Countries, Rescue, and it supports the setting up of 7 support units for refugee students in higher education institutions in Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, Germany, Spain, Italy, and Turkey. It helps refugee students resume their academic training path. Another one from the same year is the Mediterranean Network of National Information Centers on the recognition of qualifications, and it's called MERIC-NET, and it addresses the recognition of refugees' qualifications and the practical challenges related to it. Then last year we selected one called, in 2017 we selected one only called Demo-IL, and it develops training methodologies to prepare teachers, counselors, social workers, and psychologists to deal with the cultural diversity of their clients. And last summer, we selected 6. So we went from 2 to 1 and now 6. So we're quite happy that we got more applications. And these 6, I'm not very familiar with them yet, but they work on food, so on agriculture, engineering, also on the health sector in different countries in the region, in the Middle East mainly. You can consult all the Erasmus projects on the Erasmus results platform. Then there's a question on recognition of diplomas. Well, the situation is quite uneven in the EU. We provide guidance on the recognition of qualifications, and we monitor the recognition of qualifications in the EU. But this is a big challenge in the EU. So you can imagine on the recognition of qualifications obtained in third countries, we don't have a lot of power to enforce this, but the work that we do is available on the link that I provided earlier. Then there was a question on mobility of refugees. Well, this depends very much on who recognizes the status of refugee, because the work of the EU on asylum aims at harmonizing the conditions of asylum, the criteria and the conditions to qualify for refugee, but then it depends on each member state to recognize the status of refugee with different conditions, and mobility is very much affected by this. Many refugees cannot move from one member state to another. So the mobility, the provisions in the EU directive for third country students in many cases cannot be applied to refugees because they cannot move from one country to another. Then there's a question on study as a legal pathway, as a legal migration pathway. At this moment, there is no scheme to bring people from outside the EU to the EU to study. This is a decision up to member states. So if they come, the conditions, the rights that these people enjoy are regulated at EU level, but the fact that they can come or not is very much a national decision. So we might be supportive of the idea of study as a legal pathway, but we don't have a scheme and we don't have the power to decide who comes to the EU or who cannot come to the EU. And finally, there is a question on the employment gap, and this is a huge question, and I mean, I don't have a short answer. I would invite the participant to consult the Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund, mainly on the integration part, where we support integration in different areas, and employment is one of the areas. And of course, the European Social Fund, which is a huge instrument to support training and employment policy. So this is the shortest that I can make it for the list of questions. If you have any more question, or if I forgot anything, I'm ready to reply.
Thank you very much. Very valuable to have the EU perspectives, and I think that you covered the questions that were sent via chat. And unfortunately, I think that our time is up for now. For the questions that were already sent to the chat, maybe we can continue for a couple of minutes via chat. But otherwise, I just encourage you to visit our website for the Crete project. So as a Horizon 2020 Science for Refugees project, we are targeting especially 9 countries: Austria, Belgium, Flanders, Germany, Greece, Finland, France, Norway, Sweden, and the UK. So especially if you are from those countries, it would be wonderful if you could share your good practices with us, as we are producing a compendium of good practices as one part of the project activities. Also on this slide you can see the upcoming two webinars, and we warmly welcome you to join us for those as well. But now I thank the speakers. And thank you so much for participating, and hopefully see you again in these 2 webinars. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.